1944. Deep in the mountains of Japan, a captured P-51 Mustang sits under armed guard. Japanese engineers swarm over its sleek fuselage, measuring every curve, photographing every detail. What they discover will shatter their understanding of American engineering and change the course of the Pacific War. The Mustang wasn't just another fighter. It was a mechanical revolution that Japanese intelligence called the devil's own machine. But here's the shocking truth that remained classified for decades. Japan's assessment of the P-51 wasn't what you think. Behind closed doors in Tokyo, military leaders whispered fears that would have stunned American pilots. Today, we're uncovering the secret Japanese intelligence files that reveal how the rising sun viewed America's most legendary fighter. From desperate attempts to copy its design to classified psychological reports on pilot morale, this is the untold story of how one aircraft broke the spirit of the Imperial Japanese Air Force. Let's transport ourselves back to late 1943. Japanese radar operators in the Kuril Islands detect something impossible. American fighters escorting B-29 bombers deep into Japanese territory. Not from carriers, but from bases thousands of miles away. The range was unprecedented. Impossible, according to every calculation Japanese strategists had made. Starting in late 1943, Japanese pilots encountered a new enemy, the P-51 Mustang. Despite some early successes, it quickly became evident that the new fighter was a deadly opponent. The aircraft responsible was sleek, silver, and unlike anything in the Japanese arsenal. Intelligence reports, filtering back to Tokyo, described a fighter that could fly further than most bombers, while maintaining performance that matched or exceeded Japan's best interceptors. The implications were terrifying. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, American fighters could reach the Japanese homeland and return safely to their bases. The protective cocoon of distance that had shielded Japan's industrial heartland was suddenly shattered. But here's where our story takes its first dark turn. Japanese intelligence wasn't just concerned about the Mustang's range. They were terrified of what it represented. The P-51 Mustang embodied everything Japanese military philosophy rejected. Where Japanese fighters like the Zero sacrificed durability for maneuverability, the Mustang achieved both. Where Japanese designs prioritized spiritual purity over practical effectiveness, the Mustang was brutally pragmatic. It was an aircraft that seemed to mock the fundamental assumptions upon which Japanese air power had been built. Colonel Takeshi Yamamoto, chief of Japanese fighter development, wrote in a classified memo dated December 1943, "The American long-range fighter represents not just a tactical problem, but a philosophical crisis. How can an aircraft achieve what our engineers deemed impossible?" What Yamamoto couldn't know was that he was witnessing the product of one of aviation history's greatest collaborative efforts, a marriage of British innovation and American industrial might that would redefine air combat forever. The shock of the Mustang's appearance over Japan wasn't just tactical, it was psychological. Japanese pilots who had grown confident fighting shorter-ranged American fighters suddenly faced an adversary that could follow them anywhere. There would be no safe havens, no tactical withdrawals to friendly territory. The sky itself had become When the first intact P-51 was recovered from a crash site in Burma in early 1944, Japanese engineers faced their greatest technical intelligence challenge of the war. What they discovered would fundamentally alter their understanding of American capabilities. Marrying an American dive bomber design and a British engine, the North American P-51 Mustang became one of the greatest fighters of World War II. The Mustang's heart, the Packard V1650 Merlin engine, immediately captured their attention. Japanese engineers had struggled for years to develop engines that could maintain power at altitude while remaining reliable. The Merlin's two-stage, two-speed supercharger system was a revelation that Japanese metallurgy simply couldn't replicate. But the real shock came when they examined the aircraft's construction. Japanese fighter design had always emphasized weight reduction above all else. The Zero's legendary maneuverability came from its feather-like construction, achieved by eliminating armor, self-sealing fuel tanks, and other protective systems. The Mustang represented the opposite philosophy. It was built like a tank that could fly like a hummingbird. Technical analysis reports, only declassified in 1982, reveal the depth of Japanese concern. Chief Engineer Jiro Horikoshi, designer of the Zero, wrote after examining the captured Mustang, "The Americans have achieved the impossible. This aircraft combines the range of a bomber with the performance of our finest fighters, while maintaining structural integrity we have never approached. Our entire design philosophy may be fundamentally flawed." The Mustang's laminar flow wing design particularly baffled Japanese aerodynamicists. They had dismissed such concepts as too complex for combat aircraft, yet here was proof that advanced aerodynamics could be mass-produced and deployed effectively in battlefield conditions. The wing's ability to maintain smooth airflow at high speeds gave the Mustang a crucial speed advantage that Japanese engineers struggled to understand, let alone replicate. Perhaps most disturbing to Japanese analysts was the Mustang's construction quality. Despite being mass-produced by factories that had been building automobiles just years earlier, the fit and finish exceeded that of hand-built Japanese fighters. This challenged fundamental assumptions about American industrial capabilities and craftsmanship. The psychological impact on Japanese engineers was profound. They had been told that American manufacturing prioritized quantity over quality, that mass-produced weapons were inherently inferior to handcrafted Japanese designs. The Mustang shattered these comfortable myths with brutal efficiency. Nothing in Japanese planning prepared them for an American fighter that could escort bombers from Iwo Jima to Tokyo or Berlin and back. With an operational radius over 1,650 miles, the P-51 Mustang made Japanese defensive strategies obsolete overnight. Arriving in the Far East in late 1944, Mustangs escorted bombers, flew close support, and conducted reconnaissance. Their range meant American bombers could now hit targets once considered untouchable: factories, training bases, and depots deep in the Pacific. Classified assessments showed genuine panic among Japanese planners who realized their safe zones no longer existed. Secret morale reports revealed an even deeper problem. Ace Saburo Sabai wrote, "The Silver Mustangs appear without warning at impossible distances. How can we plan tactics against an enemy who can be anywhere?" Continuous Mustang pressure erased the breathing spaces Japanese forces once enjoyed when carriers withdrew. A captured September 1944 planning document summed up the crisis. "The enemy's long-range fighters have invalidated our entire defensive framework. Retreat routes we considered safe are now contested airspace." The Mustang had not only transformed tactics, it had rewritten the strategic rules of the Pacific War. When P-51 Mustangs began appearing in strength over Japanese territory in mid-1944, combat reports told a grim story. Losses soared, and Japanese commanders urgently sought weaknesses to exploit. Pilots used to short-ranged, predictable American fighters suddenly faced an adversary that operated by new rules. In 6 months, Japanese Air Force losses jumped 340%, and kill ratios flipped from 2-1 in Japan's favor to a crushing 8-1 for the Americans. Debriefings revealed more than numbers. Ace Hiroshi Nishizawa wrote, "These silver demons appear from impossible altitudes, waiting for perfect opportunities while maintaining formation discipline our pilots have forgotten." The Mustang's real strength lay in its tactics, avoiding zero dogfights and using speed and climb to control engagements. Top units like the 357th and 354th Fighter Groups scored hundreds of victories. Japanese analysts warned, the Americans no longer fight individually, they attack and disengage at will. Some veteran pilots began avoiding Mustang formations entirely, not from fear but from the certainty of defeat. Wing Commander Yasuo Kuwahara concluded, "It is faster, climbs better, dives better, and still has fuel when ours is nearly gone." American intelligence exploited the psychological effect. The sight of P-51s over once safe skies became a potent symbol of US reach and technological dominance, sapping both military and civilian morale. As the Mustang's devastating effectiveness became clear, Japanese engineers and tacticians launched desperate attempts to develop countermeasures. What followed was a masterclass in how technological desperation can drive innovation in unexpected directions. The first response was attempted reverse engineering. Japanese engineers working from the captured Burma aircraft tried to replicate the Mustang's most critical systems. They failed spectacularly. The two-stage Merlin engine required metallurgical techniques and materials that Japanese industry simply couldn't produce under wartime conditions. More disturbing were the tactical modifications attempted by Japanese fighter units. Some squadrons began using kamikaze-style ram attacks specifically targeting Mustang formations, reasoning that trading one Japanese pilot for one American pilot in such an advanced aircraft was strategically beneficial. These tactics proved largely ineffective, as the Mustang's superior performance allowed experienced pilots to avoid such desperate attacks. Perhaps most revealing were the psychological countermeasures attempted by Japanese commanders. Secret training documents from late 1944 show attempts to prepare pilots mentally for combat with what they termed the invincible American fighter. These psychological preparation techniques included meditation exercises designed to overcome fear and detailed briefings on the Mustang's supposed weaknesses. A classified Japanese technical bulletin from November 1944 reveals the depth of their desperation. New tactics must be developed immediately to counter the American long-range fighter. Conventional engagement results in unacceptable losses. Pilots must be trained to attack only when tactical advantages are overwhelming, and to disengage immediately when the situation becomes unfavorable. The most shocking countermeasure was Operation Ken Go, a classified program to develop Mustang killer aircraft using captured American technology. Japanese engineers attempted to make German jet engine technology with American aerodynamic principles learned from studying the P-51. The program consumed enormous resources and produced nothing but prototypes that never reached operational status. By late 1944, Japanese military psychologists identified a systematic morale crisis among fighter pilots triggered by the P-51 Mustang. This was not just fear of a better aircraft, pilots had faced that before, but a collapse of faith in Japan's claimed technological and spiritual superiority. Dr. Kenji Yamada reported, "Pilot morale has deteriorated beyond normal combat stress. Pilots report feeling hopeless before engagement even begins." The Mustang's polished aluminium finish, sleek lines, and disciplined formations projected a confidence that earned it the nickname Silver Death. Some pilots refused missions if P-51 escort was expected, even requesting transfer to kamikaze units rather than face them in combat. The crisis worsened when intelligence revealed many Mustang pilots were younger and less experienced, yet consistently outperformed seasoned Japanese aces. Captain Minoru Genda warned, "They have convinced our pilots that technology can overcome spirit. This is an existential threat to our philosophy." The despair reached ground crews, who questioned the value of maintaining aircraft against such odds. A 1945 survey showed pilots rated the P-51 as the most daunting American fighter, lower even than the advanced Hellcat and Corsair. In the war's final phase, Japanese intelligence compiled its definitive P-51 Mustang assessment, found decades later in a former officer's papers. Titled Analysis of American Long-Range Fighter Capabilities and Strategic Implications, it declared, "The P-51 Mustang has fundamentally altered the strategic balance in the Pacific theater." The report cited 5 decisive factors: unprecedented range, superior performance that erased Japanese fighter advantages, rugged construction, mass production without quality loss, and tactics that maximize strengths while avoiding weaknesses. Most striking was the psychological note. The appearance of P-51 formations causes decreased aggression, hesitation, and premature disengagement. Its conclusion abandoned traditional doctrine. Countering the Mustang was not feasible, and resources should shift to strategies not dependent on air superiority. The final judgment cut deeper than tactics. The Mustang embodied US industrial and organizational strength, a power Japan admitted could outweigh pilot skill or fighting spirit. The P-51 Mustang didn't just win battles, it won the war for hearts and minds, proving that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one that convinces your enemy they've already lost.